widely spoken about, but less people actually know what they're saying. Generally, they would say, "Oh yeah, don't touch that; it's muktzeh." But we have to understand that not everything that is not for Shabbat is also not muktzeh, and there's also different types of categories of muktzeh that we would have to delve into. So B'ezrat Hashem, we'll try to learn these different topics and different categories, and we'll understand how to interact with those types of different muktzehs. So first of all, what is muktzeh? Muktzeh is it means in Hebrew or in Aramaic, it means set aside, meaning it's something that is set apart from our regular conduct on Shabbat, that we're trying to distinguish that this is not to be touched or not to be moved. And the reason why the sages instituted this idea of muktzeh is that they wanted a person to safeguard himself from accidentally performing any type of melacha, any type of a work on the Shabbat, and then he would accidentally carry one item from one domain to another domain. And so if he would do this, then that would be a melacha, and it would be a problem. It would be an isur, it would be a prohibition. And so they limited what we can handle, what we can carry, and with that, we won't come to accidentally carry from one domain to another, which again is forbidden by the Torah on Shabbat. And so the Rambam actually explains it a little. He explains it that are a little differently, because he says that the sages wanted to make sure that a person understands the great sanctity of the Shabbat, to understand that this day isn't just like every other day. So much so that you can't even go ahead and touch certain things, or we'll see speak certain things is even forbidden to do on the Shabbat. Because the day itself is so great, is so holy, and so it shouldn't just be the manner that we dress, or the manner that we eat, or that we go to synagogue. Also, the things that we interact with, the things that we speak, have to be distinguished from Shabbat versus the rest of the day, the rest of the week. And so, with those in mind, we can understand that the sages wanted to bring more safeguards, so a person is more aware of the day and more aware of what he's doing. So, with regards to muktzeh, and we're going to talk about all of these in more depth, but we're going to break the idea of muktzeh down into like 6 different categories, and B'ezrat Hashem will go into each different category and understand them a little bit more in depth. Just so we have the basic terminology, though, there is going to be something called kli shemelachto leisur, which is a tool or a utensil that it's forbidden to use it on Shabbat because of what it is. For example, like a hammer, or for example, like a sharpening tool or a screwdriver. All of these things, their main function is not for the Shabbat, is not able to be done on Shabbat, and therefore it's a tool that we would consider it a kli shemelachto leisur. This category, and we'll talk about it more in depth later on, but the category of isur of this is that a person is not allowed to move it unless he needs it for its own sake, for the sake of using it in a permitted manner, which we'll see. For example, let's say a hammer, okay? And he needs it not to hammer in a nail, but he needs it to open up a nut. Okay, I guess he doesn't have any nutcrackers, he doesn't have anything. So we say in that situation, since he does not have any other item to open up the nut, then he's allowed to take that hammer and use it, even though it's a kli shemelachto leisur. Similarly, if it's lying on a Shabbat table, right, and you forgot to take it off before the Shabbat, and now it's in the middle of the table, well, how are you going to have dinner there? It's right in the middle. So that's called letzorech makomo, that's for the sake of the place. And in that case, you would also be able to move it. That's specifically for kli shemelachto leisur. If it's for a reason that it left it outside and you're worried someone's going to steal it, or it's going to get ruined in the sun or the rain, at that point you cannot move it that's still forbidden to move it in that situation. Then there's something a little bit more stringent, and that's going to be called Muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis, which translates to it's Muktzeh. It's an item that is used for a purpose that is forbidden on Shabbat, and it wouldn't be used for any other purpose than the intended purpose that it is made for. So, for example, a camera. All right, a camera. The only reason a person is going to use a camera is for the sake of a camera. He's not going to open up a walnut with it, or he's not going to start using that. So, because of that, and it's generally something that's relatively more expensive, or it's something that's more rare. In these cases, we say that it's Muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis, and therefore the person is more guarded, is more restricted with that category, in that even if you need it for its place, you're not allowed to move it directly. And we'll see all of these halachot. Then you have another type of item that's called kli shemelachto le'eter. It's an item that it's even allowed to be used on Shabbat. For example, a chair or a cup. People think that a chair, it's not muktzeh. What's the problem with it? So again, if you're going to tell me that the whole problem with muktzeh is that a person shouldn't come and accidentally carry it from one domain to another domain, or from a private domain to a public domain, then every item should be an issue. And because of that, we're saying, yeah, you're right. Every item is an issue. Even cups, even chairs, even forks. They're all melachto klisha melachto le'eter. Yes, you can use it on Shabbat, but you shouldn't mindlessly carry these items, because you might come to carry them from one domain to the other domain. Then you have something called Muktzeh mechamat gufo. This is an item that really has no use really at all, and it includes things that really aren't tools. They're not utensils. They're not edible, nor for people and nor for animals. Things like stones, wood, money. All of these things are kind of worthless within itself, and they don't have really any intrinsic use. And we'll see these, and then of course we'll see all of these halachot, how it gets it's a little bit more strict. Even if one has a stone, unless he has a specific stone already designated, then we'll see it gets different, and we're more lenient in that area. And then you have Muktzeh mechamat mi'us, which is Muktzeh that is an item that is disgusting. It's something that's filthy, such as garbage, such as let's say a diaper, right? In all of these cases, we're going to say that there's a special heter, special allowance to move these because they are gross. But we'll see, if the person does not find them necessarily gross, it could be that it's not necessarily an issue. Then you have something called basis ledavar ha'isur. And again, we're going to talk all of these more in depth. I just want to give you guys the overview, the general picture, and then we'll go into detail on all of these more in depth. Because again, Muktzeh is a very thrown under the bus topic. Everyone says, "Oh no, don't touch that. It's Muktzeh." What type of Muktzeh? Now we've shown that already. There's like 6 different types of Muktzehs. So maybe I can't touch it because it's Muktzeh le'eter, and then I can touch it. I just can't move it mindlessly. So again, we have to make sure that we have the terminology. It's don't worry. It's not just you guys. It's generally all Jews that have not learned the topic of Muktzeh. They're not familiar with these topics, with these types of Muktzeh. So you have this thing called basis ledavar ha'isur, which translates to an object that is a base to a thing that is forbidden. And so even though it itself is good, is fine, the base is you would have been able to move it, but now since you have an item that is a more stringent type of Muktzeh on it, then it becomes the same stringency as that item. So if I have, for example, a pillowcase or a tray, a silver tray, and then I accidentally left on it my laptop. Okay, which a laptop we'll see is maybe a Muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis, because you're not going to take your laptop and start opening a walnut with it, and it's pretty expensive, and you have no other purpose for it. So once I have it on the pillow, well, I can't do it tzorich lekemekomo. I can't take it because I need the pillow. I want to go to sleep. So what I'm going to do, we're going to see B'ezrat Hashem, what do you do in that situation if you left your laptop on your pillow? And then the last case that is considered muktzeh, and it's a little less common, is muktzeh mechamat mitzvah. It's muktzeh because it has been set aside for a mitzvah. The most common case you'll see with this is, for example, like the sukkah decorations, the schach, or a lulav, right? So all of these things, since they're designated for a mitzvah, they become muktzeh, and you're not allowed to. Well, we'll see if you're going to what you can do. Can you move these things? B'ezrat Hashem. Okay, so that was again the general picture of what we're going to be covering, and B'ezrat Hashem we'll now go into more of the specifics. So. Nolad is a separate melacha. Okay. So the so like what we mentioned, that the idea of muktzeh is so that we don't come to carry from one place to another place, and the idea it really is that again we want to be more mindful of what we're doing, and so when moving these items. When we're talking about moving them, we're talking about in a normal manner of moving them, meaning grasping them with one's hands and moving them. And in that sense, you are not allowed to. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about moving. So if someone's for example, if there was some utensils on a bed, right, and one pushed them off his bed with one's body. Well, that's going to be something different. That's not going to be considered moving in the sense that we're talking about moving with your hands. That's going to be a different type of moving, which we're a little bit more lenient in that regard. And so we'll see that if there was, for example, let's go back to the case of the laptop on the pillowcase. If he's able to use his body to kind of move it at that place, at that point. You can move it, but again, when we're talking about moving, we're talking about grasping, moving it with our hands. Similarly, it's permissible to move the muktzeh item with one's foot. So again, when we're saying moving, what we're talking about is with our hands. So if there was an item, let's say a pencil that fell on the floor, and you want to move it so the baby doesn't take it, right? You can kind of kick it to the side, so that the baby won't come to take it. So again, that works with anything, like camera, the laptop, right? Whatever it may be. If you need to move it, then you can just kind of kick it to the side, and you're good to go from there. So something that is usually moved with one's body. For whatever reason, that would not be able to be moved on Shabbat. So if someone has so those types of watches that move, they work when you move it. So on that, if you put it down and it stopped moving, then you're not allowed to pick it back up, because it's going to start working again once you move it. Even though that we said that maybe it's not the act of the moving, nonetheless in that situation you are not allowed to go ahead and move it. Similarly, so moving we said is basically with the hands. Therefore, if for whatever reason there was let's say a pencil on a table, even though you can technically move it, we'll see, but you're also allowed to blow it off the table, right? So as long as you're not physically going with your hands and taking the item, at that point it's not considered moving. It's considered something that's close to moving, but it's not for the sake of these halachot of muktzeh. So we come down that you can move it with your body, you can move it with your foot, and you can blow it. And any of these items if any of these types of muktzehs, all of the ones that we talked about up until now, were in a situation, then one is able to be lenient and use these types of methods in order to make sure that the muktzeh is not bothering him anymore. So whatever that may be, whether it's the laptop, the money, whatever it may be, you can either blow it, you can move it with your foot, or you can move it with your body. So muktzeh items, all of the muktzeh items that we talked about, again, the problem is to move them. So if one were to touch them, or if he were to sit on them, or he were to, lean on them, right? And as long as the item does not move, then it's fine. Then you're allowed to. So for example, if someone wants to smell roses that are still planted in the ground, so we know that roses are, and we'll see, I guess, that it's muktzeh. Nonetheless, as long as he doesn't, pick it up or he doesn't move it, then he's fine. So he can just go ahead and smell it. Even if his nose touches it, it's not a problem. Similarly, an electric lamp. Now, let's say there's an electric lamp that is set up in the synagogue, right? As long as one doesn't move it, he's allowed to touch it, okay? And so, again, if, for example, let's say he had in the synagogue they had the lamp and he used it as a stander, as some kind of lean for his book, that's perfectly permitted. Just needs to make sure that he doesn't turn it off or he doesn't accidentally pull out the plug or something. And so similarly, you're allowed to sit on muktzeh, like we said. So if there's like a stone or even a car, right, you can sit on it or lean on it, and it's not a problem. Now, if the item would move, right, and so if the item would move, then you would have an issue because you don't want to come to accidentally touching an item that would move. So if if something were to, for example, an egg that was laid on Shabbat, right, then if you might accidentally touched it, right, it would move over. So in that situation, we say that it's forbidden to touch such an item. Similarly, if someone were to lean on a smaller car, right, it could be possible that it would move a little bit. So you want to make sure that in that situation we do not lean on those vehicles. But on if it's a bigger vehicle or like a tree or a rock, in those situations there's no issue because you're not moving it. With regards to now we're talking about cars, right? So technically, it's permissible to open the door of a car, let's say to remove something from it. Of course, we're talking about in the case where there's no light that turns on. So maybe you have one of those older cars, and we're talking about in the case where there isn't a proper eruv, so you can carry from your car to your house. In this situation, there's no issue because the vehicle, you're not moving it, right? And also it's a base. The vehicle becomes a base for a muktzeh item that is permitted to take out. For example, let's say you had your talit there, your tzitzit, or maybe you had a book in there that you wanted to read. Again, we're talking about specifically in the situation where if you open the car door, there's not going to be any lights that turn on. There's not going to be. So I don't know how practical that is nowadays. Most cars, as soon as you open it, it's all of the lights come on. So it's more difficult now. But even 10 years ago, it was more. You could find some cars that would not turn on. In that case, would you be able to move from your car if it's in an attached garage? So again, as long as there's no lights that are going on in the car, then if it's an attached garage, then that's technically part of the house. And so in that case, even if there was no eruv, you would still be fine. And we're just saying that the idea is that it becomes it's a basis, it's a base. That way, that no matter what happens with the base, you're not moving it, you're just opening. Again, you're making sure that there's no lights, because if there's lights, then that's a whole other issue that has nothing to do with Muktzeh, that has something to do with you're opening a light. And you're just being able to take out an item that is in there. Okay. But nonetheless, this is generally if there's a necessity for it. Meaning, generally we don't want to do this because people might see us and be like, well, what is he doing? He's going in the car. He's going in the car on Shabbat. And so because it's called marit ayin, that onlookers might start being skeptical about the person. So we act more stringent in this regard. Again, if there is some need for it, then it's possible. Okay. There was once a case where a couple or a guy, he didn't have any place to sleep that night, so he asked Rav Ovadia if he could sleep in his car. And when of course the lights aren't on, this and that, and Rav Ovadia said, "Yep, you're allowed to go sleep in the car. Again, as long as the lights don't turn on, you're not moving the car. I guess you have the handbrakes on, so all is good. If you're not able to find another place in the area that you're in, you can sleep in your car." If someone found on Shabbat that their car door was open, and he has items in there that are muktzeh, like work documents or a laptop or a work laptop, whatever it may be, he's not allowed to shut the door in order to protect them from being stolen. In that case, this would be considered moving an object for the sake of a muktzeh item, right? That you're not allowed to move. And so since you're moving the car door, even though the car isn't moving, but you're moving the car door for the sake of those items that are in the car that are muktzeh, that you wouldn't have been able to move, and you're not allowed to move because to save them from being stolen. But if there was an item in there that was not muktzeh, for example, you had like a book in there, right? At that point, then you can close the door and say it's for the sake of the book and not for the sake of the other muktzeh items, and it's permitted even though the other muktzeh items are in there. Again, this is assuming that there's no lights and everything is kosher in that respect. Nutshells, I believe, are muktzeh, so should we not avoid cracking nuts on Shabbat altogether? So that was the question. Should we try to avoid cracking nuts on Shabbat? No. If nutshells are muktzeh, you're right, and we'll see there's a type of muktzeh that we'll see that there is a heter, there is a way to go ahead and move them. But one should not go ahead and, especially if someone likes nuts, he should not go ahead and deprive himself of the nuts because he's scared of touching the muktzeh. We'll see there's a way in order to alleviate the problem of those nuts being muktzeh and moving them around. And we'll see that B'ezrat Hashem. Don't want to jump the gun too much, but that was a good question. Moving muktzeh items indirectly, similar like we said, and a muktzeh item is only considered muktzeh in the sense of the prohibition to move them is only in a case where one is actually going ahead and moving them. So if for whatever reason he moves it, but he didn't really move it, then it's fine. So what am I talking about? For example, let's say I have a bunch of muktzeh items, right? And underneath it is like a book, right? So I put my hand down to get the book, and when I bring the book out, all of those muktzeh items, let's say pens or pencils, right? They start going to the side. They start scattering everywhere. So I technically moved them, right? So I said, no. What's his true intentions? His intentions were to get the book. What happened afterwards is just a cause of what his true intentions, what of his true movement was for. And so in that situation, if I'm just moving it, I'm not moving it, it happens to move as a result of an action, well then that's fine. So if I had my book inside of a pile of pens and pencils, as long as I am able to get to that book and pull it out, even though that the pens and pencils will move, so that is not an issue. Some poskim rule that with regarding the item of Muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis, that over there we're a little bit more machmir, or a little bit more stringent, and this idea of titul min hatzad is forbidden. So let's say I had that book on top, I had a laptop on top of the book, and I try to pull that book, and then it's going to move the laptop. There are some poskim that say it's good to be more stringent, but the halacha follows those who are more lenient and says that it's allowed. So even if that book was under the laptop, you're allowed to take that book, even though you're going to inadvertently move the laptop. Well, that's not your intent. Your intent is moving the book, and that would be allowed. Oh, here. Now we're going to go to the nut question, okay? So what happens if you have all of these nuts, the shells, right? These of either of nuts or of sunflower seeds. So how do you get rid of those items? Because technically they are muktzeh. So what do? So what you can do is you can take a knife or like a squeegee, and you can take all of them and kind of throw them off the table, right? I guess you don't want to really do that because then it'll be on the floor. But we consider this as a muktzeh mechamot gufo, that they have no purpose. They're not a kli. They're not a item. They're not suitable for eating. And since they're kind of just there, well, you can kind of move them to the side. Now, most people aren't going to do that. What's the eitzah? What's the advice if someone has sunflower seeds or even an egg? Right, an eggshell is also considered the same category. So what we say is that you can either go ahead and put in the trash immediately. Right, take the. I guess you wouldn't really do that with sunflower seeds. Maybe more so with an egg. You just peel it right into the trash. But let's say sunflower seeds. You're in the middle of or nuts. You're on the table. You're eating. What do? So the best thing to do is have a plate. On that plate, make sure that there is another edible item on it. For let's say like a piece of bread, a piece of fruit, something that you don't want to eat it anymore. You're going to designate that to make it to make this plate now movable. Okay, and so you take that whatever it is, that permitted item, place it on the plate, and then as you eat the nuts, you can go ahead and put them on the plate, and then when you're done, you can move that whole plate to the garbage, because it's not only nut shells. It also has a permitted item, whether it's that fruit, whether it's that piece of bread, whatever it may be. Something, again, not a full piece of bread, even when it's like a little crumb, couple of crumbs, something that gives it at least importance, but not too much importance that you cannot throw away the bread in a haphazard way. And in that way, you're able to clear off the table. We'll see also that if there's too many seeds, then what would happen is that it becomes becomes disgusting, and if it becomes no one wants a pile of sunflower seeds on their table, so then it becomes graf shel rei, becomes a pile of filth, and at that point someone is allowed to move it even by hand, because the lenient opinion is that if there's such a large accumulation of shells that a person becomes disgusted, or it's filthy for him to leave it on the table. At that point, we say it's permitted to go ahead and move them. Again, the easiest kind of method is to have some kind of bowl, or to collect it all and make sure that you have some kind of fruit or edible item in there beforehand. That way, you're able to just move that whole bowl and throw it in the garbage. Also, let's say you just leave it on the tablecloth, and then when you can just put the whole tablecloth, because it probably has some edible items also on it, you just crumple up the whole tablecloth and throw it in the garbage. Or if someone has a non-disposable tablecloth, then you can take the tablecloth and at least fan it out outside, because there's going to be some edible items that are mixed in with those shells, probably, even on the table we're talking about. Okay, I hope that answers your question. Okay, so going to the first category that we talked about was Muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis. So that's the kind of Muktzeh that we said that it's more of a expensive item. It's something that has no other uses except for the function that it was designated for. And these items are prohibited to move even if you need its space, even if you need it for a different use. And it's forbidden, of course, if you wanted to move it from away from the sun or from the rain or from in order so that it wouldn't be stolen. In all of these situations, we say, again, moving it with the hands, that would be forbidden. This is so even if the owner cares for them very much. At that point, again, we have to make we know it's a special mitzvah to listen to the words of the sages, and even though it's let's say he forgot his laptop on his car, right, and it's a very expensive thing. We'll see there are other ways that you can go ahead and circumvent the issue, but he himself would not be able to move it, at least not with his hands. So examples of this type of muktzeh would be, for example, cameras, passports, special, I guess, like the knife, special knives made for like a circumcision, for a shchita, for the kosher slaughter, a scribe's pen, checks, all of these things that they really wouldn't have been used for a different purpose. No one's going to use a passport as a coaster, right? So it has no other source, it has no other use other than what it's intended to use. If that's the case, then we would say that that with regards to these items, you cannot move them not for a permissible function, not for tzorich gufo, and also not letzorich mekomo, also not for the place that it has been laid on. So if I forgot my passport on my Shabbat table, well, I can't move it with my hands. Again, we said you can move it, with your body or with your foot. I guess if someone's very flexible, they can bring their foot onto the table and kick it off. But with our hands, we're not allowed to. If someone has a very expensive menorah, expensive candle holder, whatever it may be, that is also going to be considered muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis. And so, if in that situation, let's say someone has a very expensive candle holder, and he puts it on the shulchan Shabbat, he puts it on his table, so during the night, everything's good. The night meal, it's very nice, candlelit dinner, it's very romantic maybe, but what happens in the morning? In the morning, it's already gone, there's no more light. So what do? You can move it? So no, it's muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis. It's maybe silver, maybe gold, whatever it may be, very fancy, and it has no other use. You're not going to be taking that candle sticks and start opening a rock with it, or a nut with it. And so at that point, we're saying that it's muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis, and you wouldn't be able to move it, even if you need it now for the table. Now there is there is a lenient opinion that says you're allowed to move such an item, such a candle holder. We generally go with the more stringent opinion here, and so we're saying that you shouldn't go ahead and move it, but in a very, extenuating circumstance, that he either needs the table or whatever it is, maybe he forgot it on his pillow, right, and he can't go to sleep without a special pillow, there is room to be to be lenient in that situation. Another type of in this category would be considered jewelry, right? Diamond rings, a gold necklace. They would not be considered muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis, because these items are made for wearing, and someone can wear them on Shabbat, and so there's no issue with the purpose of carrying them, right? Because most of the time you're going to be wearing them. all of these items, again, the one of the issues that we have with Muktzeh is we're afraid that the person's going to come to carry it from one domain to another domain. Most of the time, someone's not wearing jewelry. He's not carrying jewelry, he's wearing jewelry. And if that's the case, there's no issue with wearing items from one domain to another domain. And similarly with jewelry, it would be permissible. If he's, I guess, a jeweler, or he has like a business of jewelry and he has his inventory at his house, now in that case, we would say those items are Muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis. They're his inventory. He's not wearing them. Those are items that he's probably not going to be wearing, and he's probably going to be carrying them to his work or whatever it is, to his clients, whatever it may be. In that case, those items would be Muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis. So jewelry that one is wearing, that one's intending to wear, or one does wear, then we say, no problem, go ahead, you can move them, because they're not considered muktzeh to you, because most of the time you're going to be wearing them. But if a person is a jeweler, or he sells jewelry, whatever it may be, and that's his inventory, then it would be an issue of muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis, and he would not be able to move them, nor for their the place where they're sitting, or nor for a permissible function. That means if he wants to show his friend, look at this cool new watch or something, that's usually the ones, right? The watches that, especially if they're a watch seller, then come look at my watch. Well, then you're selling that. That's supposed to be your inventory, so you wouldn't be able to show him. So the idea of Muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis, it also depends on the owner's perspective on it, right? Because what sometimes might be, for a very rich person, it might not be that valuable to them, but for a poor person, it might be very important. And there's some things that have like sentimental value, that, for one person, you say like a piece of china, that someone has it more so for a decorative purposes. Another person might say, hey, this is a nice plate, I'll go ahead and eat my sandwich on it. So, in those cases, it goes it goes a case by case basis. You'd have to see how you interact with that item. If that item isn't made necessarily for anything else, then we would say that it doesn't fall into this. It falls into this category of kli Muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis, and therefore you wouldn't be able to move it. So I guess that piece of china, right, that you have sitting there, and it's and you have it so everyone can see it, or whatever it might be. That would be if you're stringent and you're very you don't let anyone touch it, or you don't use it for any other purposes other than to kind of show it off. That would be Muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis, and you would not be able to move it for its sake or for a permissible sake. And let's say you didn't have any other plates and you needed that plate, you wouldn't be able to use it because you're not usually the one to use that. You don't use that plate. Okay. So any item that is Muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis, we said that it cannot be moved, nor because you need its place, and also not because you need its function for something permissible. And certainly, we see those two are the more of the lenient categories, but more so is that you're not allowed to move them for its own protection, either from robbers or from the sunlight, from rain, whatever it may be. Now, let's say you had that piece of china, all right? And that piece of china was in the cabinet, and then your 3-year-old decided that he's going to go on a rampage today, and he banged his car into the cabinet. Suddenly you start seeing that china fall, and usually that happens in slow motion. So you decide you're going to be the savior of the day. You jump head first, you grab it, and you're like, oh, it didn't break. Well, it's muktzeh, right? So what did you do? So in this situation, it's actually permissible to make sure you catch it and you prevent it from smashing, because even though we say that in general, you're not allowed to move muktzeh, and it's forbidden. You might move it, right? But we're worried that if it breaks and falls, then you'll have a bunch of shards, and the kid might get hurt. You might get hurt. Someone might get hurt, and so he's protecting people from getting hurt. Remember, we want to make sure, and we'll see later on, maybe B'ezrat Hashem will learn that it's actually a mitzvah to break the Shabbat in order to save someone. So some people think, if you have an opportunity to go ahead and save someone on Shabbat, and it's either you can do it, or you can call a non-Jew to do it. The halacha is, you should go do it, because it's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to break the Shabbat in order to save a person's life. So similarly here, where it's you see it in slow motion, and then suddenly that thought, wait, should I not? You're allowed to go jump and save the china from falling, the expensive vase from breaking, and in that way you won't have a bunch of shards, you won't put anyone in harm. Similarly, like what we said earlier with regards to the jewelry, really any merchandise that someone has, even though it might be items that are completely permissible, for example, he has like forks and knives, plates, whatever it may be, which are perfectly permissible, but for him, they are his merchandise. He's going to go ahead on Sunday and go ahead and sell those. Well, at that point, he's not going to be using them. And if that's the case, then they become Muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis. He only has one intention for them, and his only intention for them is to sell them. This is so only though if the owner refuses to use this merchandise for his personal needs. Meaning, if everything's kind of already wrapped, and if he opens it, then he's not able to sell it, then that becomes Muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis. But I guess maybe in like other places where they're not so, they're opened, and it might be used. He has a pawn shop or something, and he has these used utensils, and he's going to be, maybe I need it. If I need it, I'll use it. At that point, we say that it's not considered Muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis. Usually, if people have merchandise, it's usually kind of already in plastic, whatever it may be. At that point, we're going to say that it's Muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis. Again, back then, people were less antsy about buying things that were brand new. Back then they understood the idea of not throwing everything out. Everything wasn't just thrown. It was used. That's things from generations that would come down, heirlooms and stuff. Nowadays, everything's new. Throw it away after 2 months and get new ones anyway. So, in that sense, the merchandise would always be something that's Muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis, and therefore you wouldn't be able to move it, nor for its sake. So, if you had like a box of all of these, I guess, forks or whatever it may be, even let's say it's toys or whatever, then you wouldn't be able to move that box because you're going to need that to sell the next day, and so that becomes Muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis, and you're not allowed to move it even if you need its place. Similarly. So with regards to, there's a difference now if we're talking about non-edible items and then edible items. So food items, right, which are edible in the present state, meaning fruits, vegetables, right, these are not considered muktzeh at all, even if one plans to go ahead and sell them the next day. They're completely, we have a general rule that food items, something that you're able to eat, they're completely removed from muktzeh, and they may be moved from place to place for any reason at all. If it's raw foods, let's say if you're a meat seller, right, you have a freezer of meat that's specifically designated for selling. So in that case, the raw food that would normally be eaten only after being cooked, so those are muktzeh, but not because they're items to be sold, rather they're muktzeh mechamat gufo, because right now in their current state you have no ability to eat them, and the only way you'd be able to eat them is if you cook them, but you can't cook them because it's Shabbat, so you're going to catch 22. It becomes muktzeh mechamat gufo, which again we'll learn a little bit about later on. There's a little bit more leniency with that, but it's very similar in the sense that with like muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis, that you would not be able to move it for its sake, for its place, for its sake, and you would not be able to move it if, let's say, if they're for its own benefit. And so, because of this, one should it's proper to refrain from moving raw potatoes or flour on Shabbat, because again, you don't have really much of a purpose for them. They're considered raw, and no one really eats them in those state. There would be a difference between matzah meal though, because matzah meal is technically just crushed up matzah, so it's not necessarily flour. Matzah meal is just crushed up matzah, and over there you can eat. Technically, you can eat it, so there will be no issue. With regards to matzot, right? So matzot also, especially if it's shmura matzah, which means that it's matzah that, for example, let's say sometimes Pesach will fall on Saturday night, and therefore he has now matzot that he has designated for that Seder, for the Pesach Seder. Those matzot that were purchased specifically to eat at the Seder night fall into the category of Muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis, and would not be able to be moved, nor for their sake, nor for their place. Any other matzahs that were purchased not necessarily for that night, he had bought the box matzah or something other than that, those would be able to be moved because they can be eaten, given to their children and animals. For example, every lulav that was used for the service of Sukkot is in the category of Muktzeh mechamat gufo. So doesn't fall into the category of Muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis, because even though they have no other function, nonetheless they're used for the mitzvah, and so therefore they may not be moved for their sake nor for their place. And so on Sukkot, if someone forgot their lulav on the table, well, you wouldn't be able to move it with your hand. Similarly, etrogs. Although we said fruits generally are completely removed from the category of muktzeh, if the etrog fruits are used for the mitzvah of lulav, and I guess a person is selling them, okay, then they would become muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis. But if the owner doesn't mind picking up and smelling the fruits, then they are not muktzeh at all, and they can be carried even during the Shabbat of Sukkot, even though on that day we generally hold that you can't eat from them, but you can still go ahead and smell them, so they have a purpose. So if you're a seller of etrogim, if you sell etrog fruits, then you're not allowed, those become muktzeh, they become muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis. But if it's just your own etrog, then it's fine. Knives made specifically for circumcision, I'm sure many of you guys don't have that. But if someone were to come into contact with them, that would also be considered muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis. Nevertheless, if there is a circumcision that needs to be done on that Shabbat, he's allowed to take it, he's allowed to carry it, and then after he's done, he may still carry it and put it in a place where for safekeeping. So he should make sure that he doesn't just automatically put it on the table, put that like straight into your bag or whatever you need. Again, I don't think anyone here is really a mohel, so I don't think you have to worry about that issue. If there is if for whatever reason it may be, you have some kind of collection of knives, right? And one of the knives on there is the one used for slaughtering, right? Shchita. And so if the one knife, the shchita knife, is more valuable than all of the other knives put together, then you're forbidden to move them. But if the ordinary knives exceed the value of the shchita knife, the slaughtering knife, then you are able to move it, because it would become a basis. And this is the idea basically in general, when you have, let's say, a base that has both a muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis and something that doesn't, that's something that's heter, you look at the value. So for example, if I have a drawer, right, and in that drawer I have my laptop, and then I also have toothpicks, right? So I want to open up the drawer to get the toothpicks, right? It has both of them, right? So I would think, oh, it's allowed to be moved, right? Because it has both of them. It has something that's permitted and something that's forbidden. So we say, hold on, what's the value of the laptop compared to the value of the toothpicks? Of course, the value of the laptop is way more expensive than the toothpicks. If that's the case, then I would not be able to open the drawer on Shabbat. Paintings and tapestries on the wall, all right, they are not considered muktzeh, and so they may be handled or removed from the wall, because no one's really going to go ahead and take this out of their house and start walking with it. Although they may be precious, right? But nonetheless, since they're pictures, they are kli shemelachto leheter, and it's permissible to handle on Shabbat. Again, you shouldn't aimlessly walk around with them. But if you wanted to show your friend, look at this picture, then you're allowed to. Even if there is a caption on the bottom, which generally you're not allowed to read the captions on the bottom of pictures, but that doesn't make that into a muktzeh that you would not be able to get rid of. It is best to avoid moving around clocks, especially if it's an electronic clock. But if one needs to, let's say you have one next to your bed and you need to see the time, you're able to move it. But a wall clock, you want to make sure to not go ahead and move it unless you know for sure that it's not going to be an issue with moving around the battery or moving around the plug. Last halacha for tonight, and we're going to do the next category, B'ezrat Hashem, next week, is that if you have any kind of cards, I guess like postcards or any of these items, even if sometimes many synagogues have these like large framed placards hanging on the walls with prayers that says on them. So these placards are not considered muktzeh, and that they may be carried. If one of them falls or you have to move them, you can move them. Sometimes they have in the synagogue, it tells you like a reminder, don't forget to say like the Omer, or don't forget to say Mashiva Orach Morei Geshem, and so you can go ahead, and if you see it's wrong, you can go ahead. Or if sometimes it says don't forget to say Ya'aleh Ve'avo, so you can go ahead and move those. Those aren't a issue. Okay, we'll end it off there for today. Are there any questions before we call it a night?
It's difficult.
Yeah, it's not simple.
So, what about you said when we move something, it's not permitted, right? Or what about we use like something, voice commands to say, bring me that coffee, or move this laptop to this location.
To who?
Without.
You're saying I tell who? I tell.
Like a robot or something like that.
Oh, a robot. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Well, the question is, if you have a robot, I guess we're getting there soon, right? If you're getting, if you have a robot, and you tell the robot, hey, can you bring me the laptop, or open it up? Yeah. So in those situations, right? For example, let's say also like a monkey, right? Mm-hmm. So on Shabbat, right? If that was the case, then in such a case, it's you can technically use these animals, I guess, for the purposes. But in order to kind of like move things around, we're going to put the line in that they wouldn't be able to move the laptop. So you tell you wouldn't be able to tell the robot to move the laptop for you, because that would be an issue of it's getting close to making the Shabbat. Remember, another reason is we wanted to make it distinct from the rest of the week. So if you have the robot doing for you things the whole week, then what's the difference between that and Shabbat? Then there would be no distinction.
What means domain? Because you said from one domain to another.
So So in general, when we're saying that, and we'll one day have the lesson on tiltul, which is carrying, is one is not allowed to generally carry from one domain to another domain. Again, what does that mean? Is one domain is your house as a private domain, outside becomes a second domain, and if you bring to synagogue, then that's a third domain, right? A different private domain. And so the idea being not your house. So if it's not your house, then it's a public domain. Again, the category of a public domain we'll have to explain one time, because there's different ideas of how that public domain, is it a rabbinic public domain or is it a biblical public domain? And so with that in mind, that you'd have to see that there's different categories, but the idea is that we're worried that the person might carry it outside of their house, and that's why we are more stringent in that sense.
So is there any spiritual effect of moving items in Shabbat?
Spiritual, I'm not sure, but we know that the sages have ruled against it, and if the sages ruled against it, then you'll be detracting from your spirituality if you go ahead and go against the sage's word. The Gemara says that if someone goes against the sage's word, he should be bit by a snake. And so it could be like a physical snake, but it could also be a spiritual snake, meaning the evil inclination, meaning that if someone goes against the sages, then he'll be affected by the evil inclination, the Satan. No one wants that. Yeah. All types of muktzeh. So the moving of the foot, the blowing is on all types of muktzeh.
Would that snake also be equivalent to the same one that we read about in the parsha this past week about the one that was going to swallow Moshe because he didn't do the bris on his son?
So I mean that's kind of different, but again, you see over there also, like, right? So someone who doesn't follow the opinion of the sages, and a snake will come in. I guess over there was a little bit more dramatic. It was with Moshe, but good reference. Okay, what was your question? Sorry.
As far as something breaking and shattering, like the plate.
Yeah.
Something like a camera or a phone or something like that. Would you be allowed to catch that as well? If there's not necessarily shards that come from it?
If it's not shards and we're not worried about anyone getting hurt from it, then we would be a little bit more stringent in catching that, because we're not the only reason we're giving it a heter is so that we're worried about human human saving. Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other questions? If not,
So Muktzeh is the items we cannot move. Is that correct?
yeah, that's basically the way to kind of, in general, to kind of just give it a simple answer.
Big picture question. Shabbat, you had a meal, okay? There's things on the table. We can pick up the knives, forks, spoons, dishes, clear the leftover food. None of that is muktzeh.
Again, so it's going to be considered muktzeh shekli melachto leheter. So you can't just go around carrying those aimlessly, but there's no prohibition to moving them off the table and moving them for whatever need you need them for.
Put them in the dishwasher.
Yeah, all of that would be.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's allowed.
Taking the garbage out.
We'll say the garbage is going to be next B'ezrat Hashem next week.
Okay.
There's going to be a little bit difference with the garbage can. It's not so easy to say you're allowed to move the garbage can, but we'll see that there is room for leniency over there.
So all those things are applicable even if we are paying somebody else to do it, instead we do it.
So you're saying even, for example, let's say like you ask a non-Jew or someone to,
Non-Jew.
yeah, right. So if in a case where someone, like I said, needs to move an item of Muktzeh in order, if it was like considerable loss, let's say the laptop, right? That's what we're saying.
Mm-hmm.
If the laptop was on his car and he's, what he's going to do, if he leaves it there, then it's going to get stolen for sure. So there he may instruct a non-Jew to move the item for him. Some say that he should that one may instruct a non-Jew to remove only a kli shemalachto le'isur. But if it was something more stringent, then you shouldn't. But we're more lenient, especially if it's going to be a heavy loss, that we permit that they can tell them. Of course, if one refrains from taking advantage of this leniency, then he will be rewarded by heaven.
So a robot is not is considered Jewish. I mean, or is I'm thinking it's the same.
A robot would be considered the item of a Jew, right?
I see.
Okay. There's no more questions. I hope everyone has a great rest of the night.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Have a good night. See you next time. Hasta luego.